They hope to fill balloons with germs and float them across the Pacific Ocean to attack West Coast cities. First to try them, they launched them with explosives, and if that had succeeded, they would then launch them with germs.
Of the several thousand balloon bombs launched at America, only 200 actually made it, one traveling as far east as Michigan. Each balloon was designed to carry incendiary devices. While some exploded, causing fires and limited damage, lives were lost in only one case. It touched down on May 5th, 1945, at the site of a church outing near Bly, Oregon. The resulting explosion killed 5 children and a minister's young wife, who was 8 months pregnant. Fortunately for Americans, the war ended before any of Ishii's balloon bombs loaded with germs could be released.
No question in my mind that had the Japanese had the facilities, they would have attacked American cities on the West Coast and as far inland as possible. In war, anything goes. That was the Japanese attitude.
With the Japanese surrender on September 2nd, 1945, Shiro Ishii's primary goal turned to survival, and his genius served him well.
When the war was ending, Unit 731 got an order from the Emperor that they must destroy all the evidence. At that time, 400 Chinese were still alive. For human experimentation were still alive, and they killed all of them.
But the deadly legacy of Unit 731 survived. The Pandora's box of plague that had been opened would continue to spread disease well after the end of the occupation and World War II. In 1947 alone, an outbreak of the plague killed 30,000 people in Harbin. And there was another, and in a way even more deadly legacy left from Unit 731, and it began the day the United States occupied Japan.
The United States had a pretty good picture of what was going on by the time of the Japanese surrender. They sent over scientific investigators. The American scientists convinced American intelligence, which was not too difficult to do, that the information they sought was in the best interests of the United States.
And Shiro Ishii was the man who had possession of that information. The end of World War II marked the beginning of a different kind of war, a Cold War that would see the United States pitted against the Soviet Union in a winner-takes-all game of military one-upsmanship. Any perceived advantage was to be exploited, regardless of the moral consequences. And within weeks after the war ended, the volumes of terrible research from Unit 731 began to attract American attention.
One of the biggest reasons that the details of Japan's bacteriological warfare were not revealed for a long time after the war was because the American government permitted the negotiation and dealing of the matter and did not release the findings to the public.
The Japanese not only kept meticulous records of their nightmarish experiments, but had the foresight to realize that these records might be their ticket to survival after the war. Shiro Ishii himself returned to Japan from China and began to play a game of high-risk poker with the Americans. If they agreed not to prosecute him and his associates for war crimes, he would hand over and decipher his research. It was a hellish proposition, with a sadly predictable outcome.
One of the most interesting documents that I've come across was a memo written in 1946 by the director of the Chemical Warfare Service of the United States, which said that he was strongly against the idea of prosecuting Japanese for chemical warfare, as this would cramp the United States' ability in the future to engage in chemical warfare itself.
American scientists were fascinated with the opportunity to acquire human experimental data. By law and by ethical tradition, American scientists could only work on animals in laboratories. But here was an opportunity, a golden opportunity, to acquire human experimental data. And they bought the idea. And so word was out that the American scientists wanted to meet their Japanese colleagues. They were not former enemies. They were not war criminals. They were scientific colleagues.
With the Cold War on the horizon, the Americans became more desperate for a solid advantage over the Soviets. Thus, the Japanese hand got stronger.
It took several years because the Japanese scientists very cleverly played on this almost maniacal passion by American scientists to get human data by saying, we have so much you wouldn't believe, but we're not going to turn over a single item to you until we get in writing a grant of immunity from any prosecution for war crimes.
For Ishii and his partners in war crimes, the U.S. military's frenzied need for advantage paid off.
In the spring of 1948, the deal was completed. The Japanese scientists turned over some, not all their data to the American scientists, and they were granted immunity from prosecution.
By some kind of cold-blooded calculus, the United States felt it had gotten the best deal.
One of the chief scientists in the negotiations wrote to his superior, the general in charge of the Chemical Corps, that we got all of this information for a cost of about $250,000. We got a bargain. In effect, he said, we got a bargain for this deal with the devil.
Shiro Ishii, the devil of Unit 731, the man who personally created the living hell in Harbin, died in 1959 at age 67 of natural causes, still a hero in his hometown. He never served a day in prison.
He will be remembered as one of the most venal and evil figures of the 20th century. He ranks up there with the heads of European concentration camps. The infamous Dr. Joseph Mengele could take lessons from Ishii in evil.
I think one of the consequences of Unit 731 and the cover-up of Unit 731 is the corruption of the scientific community of Japan after the war. So many scientists, doctors, who were co-opted or volunteered to help with this gigantic experiment, after the war attained such senior positions in academia, in government,